Hello and welcome to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders. This is the show where I speak with the most inspirational and thought-provoking leaders of today and unearth their unique stories of diversity and inclusion to help inspire, educate and motivate others to make the world a better place. Today I am joined by an absolutely phenomenal individual. Her name is Simone Roche, MBE. She is founder of Northern Power Women and Northern Power Futures, the Power Platform, the Be Heard Platform, and managing director at event curation company Events One. Simone has developed a specialist, incredible network of truly impactful women and men and curated a portfolio of campaigns, events, podcasts, which reach every end of the world globally. I'm delighted to have Simone on the show today, not only because she is a true inspiration, but also because I've admired her from afar for many, many years and really excited to have her actually tell her story because she does so much sharing others' stories. This is really about how we can find out more about the real Simone. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. And it's amazing, isn't it, that we've wanted to get together for so long and it takes a podcast for us to have a meeting. So forgive us if this goes into a meeting agenda, but I'm really excited to catch up with you. And actually, it's just brilliant because what you do is phenomenal. And the impact that you make is literally dialing it up global. I love it. I absolutely love and admire everything that you do.
Oh, Simone, right back at you. I'm so excited. You are a ball of energy. Every time I see you doing something, I'm like, yes, come on. So Simone, tell us how you came to be where you are today for, I'm sure, the very few people who don't know who you are and how you came to be pretty much doing everything and taking over the world.
I feel like an accidental entrepreneur, and in actual fact, I don't really think I'm an entrepreneur at times. I always think I'm the worst entrepreneur in the world because I tend to give everything away, kind of thing, because I just I'm impatient and I want to make change. I 100% fell into gender equality by mistake, I think, or again, on purpose accident. 33 years ago, actually, I started my life in the military. And it was very much had no real clear idea what I wanted to do. I knew I'd done the wrong A levels, kind of not struggling, sort of potting my way through that A level season, I think, and decided didn't want to go to university. What would I do? And anyway, I found myself at the RAF careers office and did the test. I'm like, not quite sure. Went to the Navy and thought the first thing I did when I got in there was they took the mickey out of me. And I thought, oh, actually, this could work for me. And that was the start of an 8-year-long adventure. And the reason I mention it is it's when I reflect now on what I do, I kind of always think back to, when I looked out and about and thought, what do I want to be? Who do I aspire to? I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see what I wanted to be. So I went and forged, I suppose, my own adventure. But the story of where Northern Power Women came from was probably a dozen and a bit years ago when I was working for a sector skills council in London around the hospitality visitor economy industry. And it was also around the time where there were the first reports coming out about women on boards. Professional services, financial services were really talking about, gosh, there's only 15% of women. There's only 15% of women at board level. And when we looked at the demographic of our industries of which I was working, there was only 6. And it was like, wow, 52% of women in the hospitality, tourism, visitor economy industry, but only 6 at board. Oh my goodness. So I ended up attending this event. I created sort of this campaign called Women First. And I attended it, and it was a room full of probably 60, 70 women drinking warm wine, but it was very down. It was very negative, I felt. It's sort of very much about sort of why we can't, and this is bad, and I'll never, and I don't really, I am a little bit energetic. I'm always a firm believer in what we can do. And I remember looking around the room and there were no men. And I remember looking around the room and there were no young women. And I thought, well, hold on a second. I think we need to look at this differently. Why don't we tell different stories? And that's what you said. That's what I love to do, is give people a platform, a stage, and tell stories. So I fell into this world by trying to solve a problem. How can we solve this 6% to 15%? And for me, it was about spotlighting role models. And many, again, a sort of half a dozen years later, I found myself with an opportunity and a door opened, and there was a massive festival for international business happening in Liverpool. And bearing in mind, everything I'd done had been in London. But I just thought, I wonder what would happen if we changed the geography of where this conversation was coming from. I wonder what would happen if we tapped in and showcased and spotlighted the kick-ass women and men that I know are across the north of England. And that really is where, that was the springboard. That was the springboard for me creating something called Women Inspiring the Economy, which then led on to something which I was creating called Ready for Change, hashtag Northern Power Women. And then what happened with the hashtag overthrew the Ready for Change sort of branding I had for this conference I was creating. And the minute I changed the title to Northern Power Women, it was almost like there was a sense of identity, the Northern factor, the using your power factor, the women factor. I always think it's a bit mischievous because I get people go, what about Northern Power Men? And I'm like, it's open to, all genders, or every level of your career, really passionate that it has to cover all socioeconomic sort of status, so it's very much about accessible for all gender, nationality, race, religion, please, get involved. So that is it's not really a potted history, is it? It's a bit longer than that, but that's sort of really where the motivation for where it came from. And it's organically grown over 6 years. Our birthday was only a couple of weeks ago, but it's organically grown into this community of 70,000. It is a community. We're not a network or a membership. It's very much, I always feel like it's the place that we want to enable people to do, crack on in very northern terms.
Wow, wow, and wow. Simone, I love it. And I love the way that you describe the personality of the North, because I do feel strongly that the North has sometimes been forgotten about in business. My mum is proudly from the Wirral, actually, up in the northwest, near from where you are from. And you look at some of the rich industry and the character of the people up there, it really is something else. But when you go down in London, and again, no offense to any Londoners and Southerners, my dad is from the South, who are tuning in, there is that sense, or at least I found it when I've been in boardrooms of business, where it's like, oh yeah, the Northern monkeys and everything like that. It's often meant in jest, isn't it? But at the same time, they're so very different culturally. And so this true sense of identity that comes through, and being so very proud of your roots, is just beautiful.
I think there's something as well in the first year we created, the conference. That was the springboard, and it was on the back of that. It was like, right, what is this now, and where do we go with this? Because it's not just about a one event. I wanted what is the legacy of this? What are we trying to do? And it was very much trying to create this hall of role models. I'll talk about role models all the time, because I think, one, we all have to embrace ourselves as a role model. So, your mum over in the Wirral, at the end of the day, if you're working for a company based in the north, from the north, or whatever, you are northern, you have a power to use, and I really urge everyone to use it for good. But there's something around, we wanted to collect the male advocates on men as agents of change. We wanted to make sure that there was an amazing space for our young people to develop and grow. That was really important to me as well. And I suppose it nods back to my 17-year-old self figuring out what she wants to do. I wanted to do a piece of research, and one of the things we did in the first year or so is I wanted to do a piece of research with a business school, but I realized that would take too long. And again, going back to my impatient self, I was like, right, I'm going to do it myself. And I got a friend, and she helped me Marie Burns, and she interviewed, I think it was 37 senior women, C-suite women, and 9 men. And it was really interesting about what the impact, that's what I was looking at, what the trajectories of careers were. And the two things that were most important were the person who, I suppose, opened that door, the person who pushed them through them, the person who gave them the nudge, the sponsor, as we would call them now, if you like. It was that person that opened that door. But the second factor that was defining for their careers, that they held on to very dearly, was the northern factor. That being, that almost having that sense of identity. So you may say, and I think this is the thing I love about Northern Power Women, is you can change where you live on the planet. I had over this lockdown period, we've come across this wonderful lady over in Perth, and she just connected and said, I just wanted to let you know that I identify as a Northern Power Woman. I grew up in Lancashire. My family are from the Northwest. I now live in Perth, but I'm a Northern Power Woman. I'm like, well, that's the thing, is you can change wherever you be in the world, but you still are. And I love that. I love the identity. And I think that's what happened on, sort of with the sort of change of the brand from the Ready for Change to Northern Power Women. There was almost a sense of ownership, of people grabbing hold of it and going, right, I want that. And it's, and I think whenever I do anything, I always have in my head, does this live up to, is this purposeful, is this authentic, is this going to make a difference? Because at the end of the day, it's not Northern flaky women, it's Northern Power Women. So I think there is a sense of, that kind of, wrapping an arm around that community. And I think there's this sense of that northern spirit. And I wanted to spotlight, if we think of there's only a quarter of FTSE 250 companies up in the north. So we wanted to tell a story of who is here: innovators, creators, people from different walks of life, from your big companies, from your medium businesses. So that's what we want to be able to do. So when we want to dispel every myth, don't we, that it's not grim up north, it's actually pretty ace.
It absolutely is pretty ace. And I love your descriptor around identity. Wow, I could talk about identity until the cows come home. But when you say Northern Power Women, you immediately, or for me, I think Northern Power Women in the UK, but you're absolutely right. This is something that could apply to everyone across the world, frankly, because what does North really mean? It's almost, I'm thinking like North Star, a northern woman. It so happens that your roots are, from Aintree, the MOD background, Royal Navy. I mean, it's just incredible, your story, but it is you living that dream, which ultimately can expand out. It expands out to men, it expands out to those from different demographics, promotes social mobility, and that being a hopeful upward trajectory that we're seeing, promotes all different intersectional pieces within diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And of course, gender, as you quite rightly pointed out, is something that we are still, sadly, a fair stretch away from, in particular within those C-suite ranks. And I dare say even further up into kind of that board level, there is a significant lack thereof. And so this really does give drive, not only drive and inspiration to so many, it also, through everything that you're doing with the Northern Power Futures, helps actually develop that critical pipeline to ensure that we are leaving a sustainable legacy for the future.
I think there's two things there, actually. Yeah, Northern Power Futures was absolutely created to look at the social mobility piece, if you like, but it came from, it was inspired by women. It's only actually last night, one of my partners in crime, if you like, one of our real supporters, she sent me an image of a download session that we'd done in Manchester, what would be 3 years ago now. And it started with me talking to some of our future lists. So we have a power list, a future list of part of Northern Power Women. You don't apply for each year. Once you're in, if you know what I mean. You can, like I said, you can change geography, you can change sectors, but you'll still be a Northern Power Woman. But this is about growing this massive number. I want people to be overwhelmed with the amount of kick-ass women leaders and pipeline there are out there. But I remember sitting down with a couple of these brilliant women, and I said, if we were to gather a conversation, what would it be about? And it was a bit like, well, it'd be really good just to have a conversation that wasn't just full of white men and mares. And I was like, okie dokie. And so we went away and we conducted these download sessions. We did them across the north, and we also did them online, where we said, rather than me as a near 50-year-old woman at the time decide what we were going to talk about or curate, I wanted it to come from those people who are going to be sort of living and leading in the north. And I wanted it to be I wanted to take gender out of the, sort of out of the center focus, because that can also distract people, because not every woman wants to be involved in something that's got women in the title. And equally, we wanted to make sure that it was inclusive of all. So we had this conversation, and we created this Northern Power Futures kind of movement, where we did this giant 2-day event. Why you would launch with a 2-day event, I have no idea. I must have been crazy. In Manchester, 1,700 people, 4 stages, 120 speakers. It was crazy, but it was about the different voices, and equally it was I remember getting approached by an organisation who said, our chief exec would like to speak. And I said, I'd really like him to listen. I'd really like him to almost sort of listen and get engaged with that sort of reverse mentorship of what is about, sort of what is going on out there. So, and that's what we did. Was we said, is there somebody more relatable that we can bring into the conversation? And what I love about the whole Northern Power Futures agenda is that it has totally boosted and grown the gender agenda, which is, so it's almost that kind of that mischievous approach, because what we did is we purposely went in and curated such sort of diverse content and such really interesting, conversations. So that for me it has been really exciting to grow that. From the other side, where you talk about, sort of the C-suite level, in this last year, there's a worry, really. I'm worried in some respects about this. There's been at least 5 C-suite women that have come to me this year who've talked about exiting those businesses because they don't want to work like that anymore. And I do worry. There's, we seem to get close and then we get far enough away. So it's really important that we have this pipeline, but it's also really important that we look at how we change the way we work coming through this pandemic. We did a levelling up report last year, which was exactly, to that point. How do we make sure that we don't build back better, but we build forward better? It's really important, I think, that we look at that, and we make sure we make change and we don't just go back to the way things were.
And when you say the CEO example, I'd like you to listen, I think that is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, because this is about listening, learning, growing, and evolving. Where this movement clearly started as fabulous kick-ass women in the north, it grows, it inspires across the entire C-suite, and to those that can truly make change, those allies, which is how I see your CEO, who was listening and hopefully listening intently in the audience. But it's interesting, very, very interesting indeed, that you say there are a number of C-suite women considering exiting these businesses. And I suppose I want to ask why that is, because I've often, felt myself running an organization, it can be absolutely exhausting, but you do it because you love it and you believe in the power of changing lives. What is it that kind of keeps you going when the chips are down? Because you are yourself an incredibly powerful C-suite woman who is clearly working day in, day out for the cause because you care about it so much. What is it that stops you going through, what I think most of us feel? I often feel it, that kind of like that pressure and that almost that burnout concern.
Just when it's the messages, it's the response that you get. I always believe that when you bring people together, the magic happens, and that sounds a little bit sort of flighty, or but it does. And I think from everything I've ever done, I always do things with intention and purpose. And so when that when you can enable a conversation to happen, the very, very first thing I did, it'd be like the precursor to Northern Power Women during this international festival. this is why I set it up. So the three things: one, there was a young woman in the audience, and I had this, I don't know if you've ever spoken to, she's worth interviewing, Laura Morgan, a phenomenal entrepreneur. And she was speaking, and the young woman put her hand up and she went, "Oh my God, I want to work for you." Laura got off the stage, gave her a business card, and, you know, she was, "Come and shadow me." And she did. She went 3 months later, shadowed her, and subsequently set her own business up. The second one was a young woman, and I say young because we went to college together, but she contacted me. We'd not been in contact, but she just happened to see the event, and she says, "Simone, that event changed my life." And I'm like, "Whoa, why would you say that? That seems very full on." And she goes, "I'm in my 40s, my kids are older, they don't need me as much, I want to do more, but I didn't realize I could." And I'm like, well, why you live, you're not living in the back and beyond, this is, everything's possible. And I followed her journey, and it seemed to just fire her up, you know. And ultimately she ended up renegotiating her role, getting mentors for her team because she felt she was blocking them. And again, it just took action. And then the third one was a guy, I was at a BT Tower event, and he's a chair of a huge northern company, and he went, "Simone, the problem with women is," and I was like, "Oh no, what is he going to say?" And he did. He said exactly those words that are, you know, you can't recruit or promote women because they get pregnant and they have babies. Oh my God, it's 2000 and whatever it was at the time, 14, 15. But it was from those three things that made me realize the power of what happens when you bring people together. So starting with the guy, it made me think, right, you know what? You're not going to listen to me ever. And we did have a long conversation following this, not angry or anything like that. No need. I just was really interested in why he thought like that. But it made me understand that he would never listen to me. So what I had to do was go and collect the good guys, and then we'll do some dinosaur slaying. That's what we'll do, you know. So how do we do that? So that is a job. It's an ongoing job. And we need that to help our pipeline, our C-suite women, our cultures of our business, all of that. You know, the second one, the 40 something, you know, the potential, she would have stagnated. She was stagnating in her role. And the first person who created the business, you know, those three things. So what that happened back in 2014 at that first event still happens on every single thing. 2 days ago, we did a giant event with 240 students from Liverpool John Moores University and mentors from our community. We never are short of people who want to pay it forward. And I think that's ultimately everything we've done here. We build everything on being generous with your skills and passing them on, paying it forward and making a difference. But after that, you know, so we only have to look at LinkedIn after that to see a young student, a Liverpool John Moores, beaming, posting, "Oh my God, I was terrified to talk to these business people, but you've made me realize what business people are. They're not just scary people in suits. They might be suited, or they might be dressed, or they might have their joggers on at the moment, but they're approachable and they want to help me. You've made me believe there's people to help, and I'm not up against a glass wall or a brick wall or whatever that may be." So that's what keeps me going, is knowing that the power of bringing people together makes a difference. And even if it's a teeny tiny difference, the sum of all those parts is absolute magic, and can be and is life-changing to both the people who are giving and the people who are benefiting. So that's why.
I'm lost for words, Simone. That never happens. I'm never lost for words. You are an absolute force, an absolute force. And I think this is a really great segue actually into talking about intersectionality, because where you talk about youngsters who are inspired at these real humans, in inverted commas, these real people who they presumed were scary bods in suits sitting in perhaps white ivory towers, it's smashing the narrative of what we have perhaps learned or presumed. And that is super exciting. But talk to me a little bit about all of the different intersects, because when it comes to Northern Power Women and it comes to diversity and inclusion, the brilliant thing is this inspires ethnicity diversity, it inspires, of course, gender and these allies, eliminating the dinosaurs out of the C-suite whilst also educating at the same time. But it's also the age. You touched on age and generational diversity there. And I'm curious to know more about the different aspects and maybe even other stories as well, because I think, looking at mental health as well as another example, it's an invisible diversity. It's something that sits below the skin level. And I think especially given the current pandemic that we seem to have been living through now for many, many years, it's, impacts on mental health. And, you talk about women who perhaps and men who think or thought that they couldn't do it, or they'd hit a ceiling in their career, and actually no, this has completely flipped the script and taught them otherwise.
Yeah, and it's interesting, when we created Northern Power Futures, it was never designed to, we did this, as I say, these 2 day events in Manchester, then in Newcastle. I didn't want to create an annual series. I didn't want to do that. I almost used it as sort of fact gathering, if you like. I wanted to use it to get that insight. But I remember coming away and we kind of broke it down, and it was we've got a partnership with Bank of New York Mellon, and when we first started talking to them, we broke futures down into sort of that pre-work adult, so that sort of, I would love to go right back into primary, because that's where it all starts with the stereotyping, but I'm a teeny tiny team and I've got the energy, but I can't quite do it all, you know what I mean? So, but so for me, there's almost like that sort of pre-work adults, almost like that 16 to 18, if you like. And then there was like 18 to 24, if you like, that very early careers, or transitioning education. And then you've got that pipeline, 25 to 55, kind of like, of talent. So you can have talent, still new talent in that space, because it could be someone coming back into the workplace, someone who's been, having the career change, whatever. And then it was the 55 plus, my husband loves this, Northern Power Man, age rebels. It's those age rebels. And really interesting, because that was sort of, and then we've kind of under that, you look at that intersectionality of gender, race, neurodiversity, which I'm really passionate about. Neurodiversity, exactly, everything that you can't see, and looking at some of we need neurodiversity in our businesses. We need that talent, we need that thinking. Look at, sort of some of the real geniuses out there. We wouldn't have had certain inventions in the world, would we, without neurodiversity? So I think there's something about, creating that space. And interestingly enough, this year, over this pandemic, look at the amount of job losses that we've had. Look at the amount of people who are changing what they want to do. There's been a massive growth in female entrepreneurs. There's been a massive growth in female-led businesses, but also Black, Asian, minority ethnic businesses as well. But we need to invest in them, because there is a real lack of investment over there. But equally, we've got a whole load of what we've been badging up, our COVID change makers, those people who were C-suite or on the periphery of C-suite, who through redundancy, through mindset, through mental health, whatever caring responsibilities, have just gone, I'm out because I want to do differently. But look at that talent. So my view, my sort of mindset is always about looking at the possible. What's the art of the possible? I have to take time out sometimes to kind of go look over here and go, God, this really bothers me. What can we do about certain things? About the mass unemployment and mass mental health issues, but I try and always focus my energy on what we can do. So one of the things that we built this power platform a year and a bit ago, and it was designed to almost be a digital version of me, God help it, but it was designed to make it easy for people to get involved with these things that we're doing at universities, or mentoring, or whatever it may be, speaking. That's what we wanted to do. I want to make it easy. We all get a million things in our inbox, and my view is pass it on to someone else. So that's what I wanted to create this for, so it doesn't sort of gravitate around the same networks. We make it wider, so it reaches out. So, but one of the things we did with COVID Changemakers was literally trying, how do we harness all those skills? So whether you've got that C-suite person, this person here who could now freelance, you bring those skills together. What an amazing workforce that we've got, and equally, the other thing that I think has really come out to me is that I think particularly after the murder of George Floyd last summer, is even more, I have even more intention now to uncover and spotlight sort of every voice, and Black Lives Matter do matter, and I want to, I'm finding I'm wanting to properly sponsor, and we all have to do this, we all have to sponsor, we have to go and find. So when previously it's about, oh, we can't find the women for panels, or we can't find this, or well, we have to be explicit in what we're, and intentional in what we're asking for, and sponsor them. There was a Northern Powerhouse Summit this week, and I sort of particularly sort of championed and said, right, we need to do something, around, I want our future voices to be heard. I want to make sure we're talking about ethnicity. I want to make sure we're talking about social mobility. And we had this amazing panel that ended up with, what can chief execs do about, tackling the whole issues brought about by the murder of George Floyd, and so trying to make things practical. So I think we've got so many people out there. Let's ask, and let's give them stages and platforms to speak. So we've created this Be Heard campaign to, again, I feel like that's all I've done over the last year is create, let's create another platform, or let's create something else. But I feel like that's been the way the past year has been, so if there's a problem, it's within our gift to do, then we have a responsibility, don't we, to try and do something about it. So the Be Heard campaign is about levelling up the media and events. So it's not just the same woman of colour, or the same Asian man, or the same, when you will be the same. You get people asking all the time, we need someone to speak on Radio 5 Live tonight, or someone on here. I always would try and find someone. Now I want to create that database. So that's what the Be Heard is about. So we create specialists, a real, truly intersectional database blend of great human people.
Love it. Agents of change. This is absolutely phenomenal, Simone. And before we wrap up today, I've got to ask a couple of little mini lightning round questions. And I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to answer each. I'm going to go with the hardest one first. And, well, probably not the hardest, but what would you say is your secret to success?
I don't really think it's a secret. I think it's people. I think it's, it's your network. It's your, it's investing. We can all have a network, and we can all have hundreds and thousands of people on our whichever profiles they may be, but you've got to really invest in those relationships. So I think it's those relationships. You have long-standing relationships that you've built and grown, and that's why you flourish as a business leader. I think you can never start your community or your network early, too early. So it's people that you can go to with the silly questions.
Great answer. And what about, because there's so many of them, what about your personal inspirations? Who is it that inspires you the most?
I think it's when I talked about the conference earlier this week. As a young woman called Afia Amesu, and I asked her to speak at something on International Women's Day, and then something else yesterday. I could just see her blossom. I can see her blossom and flourish. So it's different people every day. I'm always going to say my nana, Northern Power nana, lost her unfortunately 18 months ago, and but she was always, I wanted to play football as a child, but there was no women's football. There was very limited women's sport in the big sort of team games, and she always made me feel as though one day I could play for Everton, and I never did, but in my dreams I do. So I think there's a blend. I think there's a blend of people, but different people. My nieces and my nephews. I've got twin nephews, and the girls, so that I've got 4 under the age of 11, and I think they motivate me and they inspire me to make a world a better place for them. And that sounds a little bit far out there and cheesy, but it's not. I want them to be able to not having to have the same battles.
I don't think it sounds cheesy at all. If we aren't benefiting the future generations of leaders, then what are we doing? We got to make a positive difference. And finally, and I know you did allude to your younger self right at the beginning of the podcast, but if you could go back in time, and let's say we're back in the time where you're just about to go off and work for the Navy, say, what advice would you give to young, well, still young and very youthful actually, but the very young Simone?
say yes and work it out later. It's something that I did throughout my Navy career. I did all kind of crazy stuff. If there was an opportunity, I said yes to it. I volunteered for it, and that was my university. It was my education, and I think that is absolutely the thing. Come out your comfort zone. Underwater potholing was terrifying, but never mind, I've done it. So have a go at different things, and actually, secondly, if I can have a second one, ask for help. Ask for help. People out there want to help you, and want to pass on their knowledge, because you won't be the first person to have been on the path that you're on.
Paving the way, so relevant. Simone, it's been an absolute joy. It has been a pleasure having you on the show today. And I always give a summary at the end of each podcast. I'm like, where do I start? I think there has been so many things that have stood out for me, from the intersectionality, from the paying it forward, through to making a difference, through to taking brave and bold action when it comes to doing something different and flipping the script on its head. I love some of the rich and colourful stories that you tell, from the kind of the dank room of women drinking warm wine, to this kind of uproar of excitement and amazingness with Northern Power Women, and this benefiting and having this domino effect across the entire board, from men to allies, to younger women, to older women, to Black women, to Asian women, to Asian guys. It is, when I speak to you, I feel there is nothing that we cannot do. And you unto yourself are an incredible inspiration and a role model, very deserving of the many accolades I see you have achieved. And really hope and know, I should say, that this podcast has benefited many people, myself included, because the pearls of wisdom have been exceptional. So thank you very much indeed for being on the show today, Simone, and I can't wait to catch up with you soon again already.
I know. Not warm wine, though. Not warm wine, Leila.
No, sparkling, ice cold,
darling,
Prosecco.
Thank you so much for letting me hang out with you today. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I loved our pre-conversation as well. I look forward to our next conversation. Thanks so much for having me on as a guest.
Thanks so much, Simone. My name is Leila Mackenzie Dellis, and you've been listening to the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast with the phenomenal Simone Roche. Make sure you check out Northern Power Women, Northern Power Futures. They're doing some brilliant campaigns at the moment. If you've missed anything at all, we'll put it into the show notes at the end of today's show, so you can revisit. You can listen to your heart's content on all of your favorite podcast apps, and you can check out the video version if you so wish on YouTube. Until next time, we'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Visit us at www.dialglobal.org/podcast. Thank you so much for watching the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast. Please do feel free to hit the like button below, or if you'd like to receive future notifications, do ping the notification bell here at the side. If you're interested in the audio version only, you can find it on the following streaming platforms. Any extra info and descriptions will be in the links below. Look forward to seeing you soon.